Okay. All right. Today I'm going to talk about foreign keys. And before I do that, I want to show you something. Remember the last time you were here, I was showing you the text schema, right? And every time I ran this, it would fail with this error. Oops, now it's failing with something else. I was trying to fix it, so I'll show you what I did to fix it or to find out what was going wrong. First, I'll get this back, save it, run it. And you remember I was getting this error about it being used. I looked, I wasn't finding out what was wrong. And I wanted to look at Object Explorer because I thought that would give me an idea, but I didn't have a whole lot of time. I felt it would be distracting. So what I did in the meantime is you probably can see what was going on because you see Object Explorer here. But what I ended up doing is I ended up writing this query. And the reason why I want to show you this is remember I said everything in SQL is a table. So and remember that the DDL is used to create database objects. All of those database objects go into system tables. And this code is as you see it, there's a table in the sys schema called objects, which is all the database objects. It's another table in that same schema called tables, and there's a table of schemas. So what I did is I queried all of those three tables and I looked for this. And when I ran there, this is what I got as a result. You see it says the object name which we saw, what type of default constraint we expected that, yes. There's a table called tax rates. Because you saw it was just telling us it's being used, right? It didn't say where. And then it says the schema. So that told me, oh, there's something in the invoice schema table. So remember, I hadn't dropped it. So now I know what I needed to drop. And you see it right here too, invoice.tax rates. So what I can do now is I can just go in here and I'll do drop table invoice dot tax rates, and you see it pops up. But why did I do it this way? Sometimes you don't have Object Explorer. So if I do this now, execute that, it's gone. And if I refresh this, you see that's gone. And I need to, no, it's used. I have to refresh the tables. Then it will be gone, right? So now that I've done that, I can go back to the tax schema. I'll save this and run it. Oh, come on. Oh, I probably have the line highlighted somewhere. Really? Oh, okay. I'll save that. Yeah, everything is copacetic. So now we've done that, I can minimize this again because I like to have as much of a screen as to use as possible. Now let's talk about, now that we've done that, we can talk about foreign keys. So I'll go to the notes and you can see I'll minimize that because we don't need it anymore. Minimize that. And I'll still leave a table. But you see the next topic is referential integrity. And the refresh, I'm going to go back to over here to components of a relation. And you can see it, there's this columns, records, constraints. I'm going to go to constraints. And we see we've covered primary key integrity, domain integrity, and referential integrity. Okay, so we need to talk about referential integrity today. So let's go to that chapter. So what's referential integrity used for? Well, basically, the thing we do in databases is we have everything in tables, and we want to generally the tables they have something in common with each other, and then we might say they refer to each other. Just like some of you might remember a long time ago when libraries had card indexes, right? So you'd have the card indexes, you'll go and pick the index. It has a reference to the location where you can find a book, right? So you'd go to that shelf, pick the book. Okay. Now, what they would try and do is they need to keep track of, they would order the card indexes in a certain way. And if you lose a card index, it's hard to find a book. You might never find a book again. So they wanted to preserve those. You also want to keep the books in what the order. So we do the same thing, but we have something where we can keep track of the tables are referring to each other. And for that we use, and when you need a table to refer to each other, well, it needs to look something up inside one table. You need to make sure that there's a couple of things that we need to do. And we'll talk about that right now. So it says here when two tables have something in common and depend on each other, we say they refer to each other. I'm not one to call it use you know I'm not trying to use the word related because when relational databases, the relation doesn't refer to how the tables are linked. A relation is a type of table that has 7 properties, if I remember correctly. That's why I'm trying to not say refer. All right. So if a relationship between two entities went to many, like one author has many books, one store has many items. So like I might say what a car dealership has many customers, right? A state has many citizens. Okay. Then we say generally we're going to refer the thing that has a many references the when. Okay. So and what that does is that the many table is going to impose a foreign key constraint on the other table. And the way we do that is we see dot 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 constraint name. It's going to be foreign key column. This let me change this column from the many table references the one table and a column. Okay, a column it needs. Look, so now there's some examples here that they give you. So what they don't. So now if we look at this, we see that there's an author contacts, all of this stuff. I won't go over it right now because you can look at the notes. I'll just jump to the properties of foreign key, and then I'll use a code to write up the foreign keys. So there's a couple of some of the properties, and in here I talk about the source, and I talk about the source table because that's the nomenclature that SQL that Transact SQL uses. If you look this up, I really want to change this to be saying that many. This is a WAN table. So let's say the source table or the WAN table cannot be removed because if you remove the WAN table, which is the one being referred to, it will break referential integrity. And you also can't drop the column being referred to in the WAN table because again, its data is being okay. And you can't change the data in the column that's being referenced. Okay. Um, well, if the data is not being referenced, nothing is looking it up, you can change it. All right. Um, and then the column in the many table must match its values must match columns in the WAN table. Okay. Uh, it's nice to have null values in the in the many tables column, but the one tables column should never there should never be any nulls. They should also all be unique. Um, and so you kind of have uh, reference more than one column, but I think it's bad practice. It's I think it's best to just refer to one column, okay? And one reason I think that is once you refer to that one column, you can change anything else, and we'll see an example of that. So you cannot refer to a column that's already being referred to. So, and we'll see another example of that. And those are the 10. Now, the next thing I'll talk about is where do you put the foreign key? This can throw people off. You do the foreign key, you declare the foreign key constraint in the many table, not the one table. And what's a naming convention? Well, I like to use many table underscore fk one table, and that's what it says here. And over here, I talk about sometimes people like to reference a primary key column. Columns are in the primary key, but I prefer not to do that because I want the primary key to just be used for internal stuff. I like to have, and you've seen in all the tables, we have a surrogate ID, which is just an int, and it's used for the primary key. Then a lot of other things, we have another ID, which is what we use. And um, so that's what, so you can reference a column as long as it's unique, not null. Okay. What else is there? So, and there's a syntax here, but I won't go through this right now because I'll just show you in the code. And when we see it in the code, hopefully it will make some sense. And let's go to that. So I can go over here right now. So if we look, now there's a quick rule of thumb. Whenever you see in a table, whenever you see a column that has something ID, we should guess that that's going to have um, that's going to be a reference, and I'll show you what I mean. So let's go here to the invoice, and we'll see we're going to make a lot of changes to the invoice table. So you see we had a customer ID, right? But we also there's what the customer table. So this is going to reference many. So we're going to have to put the customer, and there's a tax rate, but we also have a tax table, don't we? So I'm going to take this out because we're not going to use a tax rate. If we use a tax rate here, I have to make sure it matches. It's just so much simpler. So I'll do this. State tax rate ID. Which I'll just do state tax ID. Now let me do yeah, state. I'll just leave it as that. I'll make this car 2. Okay. And that can, so I'll make that. And then once I've done that, I don't need to calculate I'll take this away. I'll just say this is what it's going to be, small money. Because you see, I don't have a tax rate, do I, anymore? So I'll say this is small money, right? And I want to leave a total as same as price plus actually I don't need that. Yeah, I'll just take this away. I'll just take, I don't need that. And I'll make this also small money. I'm going to have to write functions or stored procedures that will calculate those, because we'll get the price. And actually, I don't need the price anymore. So I'll do invoice. So I'll do this instead. I'll go I'm going to do, and I'll go tax amount, small money, not null. And then the total is going to be what? It's going to be tax amount plus price. So I'll say AS. Okay, and we still have a timestamp, and I have a customer ID. Okay, so we've done that. Now, what am I going to throw in here? So you have a customer ID, state tax rate ID. So the invoice is going to have a customer, right? So I'm going to throw in here, I'm going to do the foreign key. You'll see how I do it. Foreign key. So alter table invoice.invoices add constraint. So I want, this is a many table, right? So I'm going to go invoice FK customer. Actually, yeah, it's company. So I'm going to change this to actually company ID. So you know it's a company table, right? So company, the references, where is it? And the type of constraint is foreign key. And I'm going to put in, what's a column? This is company ID. References. Customer dot companies, and which column in that? The ID column. right? So I wrote it this way, but I want to do the other one from looking at what's in the notes. So if I go here, like you've seen we do this fairly often. So I'll just select this, and maybe this will help it make sense. I'm doing Alt Tab. Oops. So I'll do Control V. Oh, come on. So I'll select this again. Control C, Alt Tab, Control V, and then I'll tab this over. And the constraint name now is going to be invoice score FK, and this is a tax rate. So I'll call it rate. I'm gonna call it tax rate. And move this up there. And so what's a column? It's tax rate ID. Control C. Control V. References. And we know that references, what that table is at. Isn't it tax.rates? And the column in there is state. Right? Because we see this is what state, it's car 2. Over here it's car 2, isn't it? And if we look at the data type, this is company ID is what? Car 10. And if we go to customer schema, look at the company, it's 10. So I've done that one. What's the next one? We need to do the invoice. So you see there's a invoice items, right? And we see invoice ID, car 10. So we have a foreign key constraint. Actually, we have more than one because you see there's a product ID, service ID, invoice ID. So it's going to be free because we know this is product ID. There's a product that matches what? The products table. Service ID, a services table. Invoice ID matches the invoices table. So anytime you see name ID in a table, that's a hint that there's going to be a foreign key constraint. So I'm going to do this now. Close that up. Oops. No. I'll just. And one reason why I like to copy is so that everything is in the same format. Yeah, in the same. I'll find things always in the same place. So this time it's going to be invoice.items, right? And now it's going to be item. I'll just change all of these to item right away, these two. And I know this is, I'll do one more. So I'll just copy, Control C. So this one, what's the first one in the list? It's product ID. So I'll say product. So it's going to be product.products. This is product ID. So you're starting to see how we do this in the next one, isn't it? Service. So I'll change this to service.services. Service ID. And then item invoice. Invoice ID. Okay. So now let's run this. Let's see what happens. I'll save it and execute. Oh, yes, I have to fix some of my default constraints. Yeah. So tax rate, we don't have that anymore, do we? And have a price. Oh, let me undo that. Change Control Z, and I'll change invoice tax amount. And I'll do Control C. I want to do for Control V, and I'll invoice total. I should do that saved, and let's run it. Oh, yes, total is calculated, so because it's a calculated column, you see it doesn't like that, so I'll take that away and take that away and save it, and there. So we've done the foreign keys, and I think we have a few left. Now we need to go to customer, and we see it there's an ID company, There's no, there's a liaison ID, right? We can see that there. Actually, I don't think we need that because we could do it without it. We actually don't need it because the liaison, we don't really need that. So I'll take that out. You'll see why we don't need it. So now I want to go to the liaison table. There's a company ID, right? And you show a company, it has to be unique. Why? Because we want one liaison per company. And the reason why is, the foreign key constraint, we could have duplicate. Um, we can have multiple columns of referencing duplicate, but we don't want that. So I just threw that in there. And I could check another way, but this is a simple way. Um, Actually, I shouldn't do it that way. This isn't the best way. It's just for it to work right now. Because we don't allow to have nulls, but we don't want a null. We want someone to be a representative for a company. So now I'm going to do a foreign key constraint. And remember, we always do it before the primary key. So I'll go here. Oh, um, alter. So I'll actually just do this. Add constraint. Layer underscore FK company foreign key. What column? It's company ID references customer dot companies. ID. And I made a claim that the columns have to be of the same data type. So I'm going to change this real quick so you can see how it will fail. I'll make it surrogate. ID. And let's run this just so you can see how it fails. You see invalid. Oops. So you see it's not the same data type. So now I'll change it back to company ID. And I'll save this and I'll run the whole thing again. Okay, you see, why can I drop it? Because it's referenced where? It's referenced in You see what happens when you try and drop something that's being referenced. Where was this being referenced? It's referenced here in the invoice.invoices table. So what happens if I try and drop this? See, I can't drop it because it's referenced where? By the invoice.items. So I have to drop this table. Now I can go back, right? And I can drop invoice.invoices. And then I can go back here and I can drop customer, right? So now you see, I now have to run these in kind of reverse order. I don't have to do the tax rates again because it's not referenced. So I'll save this and I'll run it. That's done. I'll go back to the invoice schema and I'll just run everything there. Oh, so I'll run everything there. And that's it. And then there's a couple of things left to do. I want to show you the logical schema of this database. So there's a logical and a physical schema of databases. The logical schema, the physical schema has to do with a file system, and which has to be a binary format. The logical schema is showing how the tables are linked to each other. And that's so I'm going to make a database diagram. If I go here, new database diagram, say yes. And what we have is I'll select these tables and add them. And close. Let's make this over here so we have more space. Oh, there's actually an invoices customer table, so I need to delete that. So I'm going to, but before I do that, what I'm going to do is I want to arrange tables. So I'll move this so you can see a bit more easily. Um, so you see this? I see this table isn't linked to anything, is it? So if I right click and remove from diagram, you have to be careful. You say I want to remove from diagram, not delete the table. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move this around a bit so that try and get everything to fit. I thought it would have rearranged it so I don't have to do this, but whatever. Okay, that part, can see that over here. What I'm going to do is move this like that, right? And I will move that, that. So from this, we can see how the tables, we can see the, how the tables are referencing each other. Okay, so customers and liaisons, right? And it's not showing any primary keys. And so we can see this, and I'm going to put the labels on them. So if I go right click, show relationship labels, you can see them. Invoice foreign, invoice company, invoice tax rate, invoice to items and products, right? So that's everything we've done. We can see a lot of stuff in here, and if I wanted, I could show. There's other things you can do with this. I don't like to do it. I go here. You can look at the table properties. I get hesitant about clicking on stuff here because you could easily, if you're not careful, you could delete something. So, but that's a database diagram, and we've seen the foreign keys. This is everything, most of what we need to do for DDL right now. And next time we meet, we'll talk about DML. All right. And you can consult the notes for more detailed examples. But well, I'll say a couple more things. Remember, we declare the foreign key constraint on the many table. A good rule of thumb is that the name, if you, and I'll show this to you again because I think it's helpful and people seem to get thrown off by this. Anytime you see a column in the table, it's some name ID. Some name should refer to a table. It's a table that it needs to refer to. So just like we saw here, company ID, state tax rate ID. All right, and I think that's it for today.